Music can move people in powerful ways. One Illinois musician shows us how it's being used for social change, awareness, and remembrance.
This is how Jonas Stomatis speaks for a past that cannot be forgotten.
So many Jewish musicians had their instruments taken away from them before and during the war. Some never, most, of course, never got them back again. Some were smashed and broken, others, who knows what happened to them.
Yona is a third-generation Holocaust survivor. She is dedicated to advocating cultural awareness. She peacefully tells family history through music.
My grandfather on my mother's side, Arno Kahn, he was born in Cologne, Germany in 1915. One day, my grandfather's parents attended an auction, and there was a violin up for auction, and they thought, well, why don't we bid on this violin and maybe we can, we'll win it for our son Arno and he can take violin lessons. And they did. And so he began taking violin lessons.
But with the rise of Nazism and World War II, opportunities for Arno Kahn were taken away. His parents secured visas for him and his siblings to leave Germany in 1937. Arno Kahn left for New York City on this ship with no possessions, no English, and no idea what horrific events were ahead.
Shortly thereafter, he learned that his parents had been killed in Auschwitz. Before they were deported to Auschwitz, they had gone to Holland and had decided to, as many other Jews did at the time, bury some of their possessions in the family garden in the hopes of protecting them and maybe after the war of returning to find them again. And so amongst those meager possessions was my grandfather's violin.
Several years later, still in New York, Arno Kahn received a box at his home. It included photographs, letters, and his violin.
He opened the violin and he played, Hatikva, the Israeli national anthem, and he played a little bit of the Star-Spangled Banner, and then I think it just sort of caved in and fell apart. From the moisture of having been buried in a garden and not played for a few years.
The Arno Kahn violin has been among dozens that are touring the world as part of the Violins of Hope exhibits and performances. Already part of 2 Illinois events in Chicago and Springfield, the project begins another way to share music and stories that were silenced in World War II.
These violins, restored by 2 Israelis, survived the Holocaust in one way or another. Some were hidden and were brought to Israel afterward. Some were just donated.
Each one has a story that brings the Holocaust to life. It takes it out of the textbook and puts it into a face, into a family, into a generation that we can't do as second gen, third gen, or even my family was able to escape. But that's a message we have trouble doing, but the music of the violins seems to bring people together.
This Violins of Hope exhibit, one of the violins had been played by a musician in a concentration camp orchestra. Orchestras were created in camps, often on by the command of those running the camp. They wanted entertainment or musical accompaniment for whatever horrors were taking place. But at the same time, you're starving and you're suffering from disease and you're cold and your family has been killed and you're being asked to make music for hours and hours every day, and you don't know when you might be picked out of the orchestra and sent to the gas chamber. And I think it left so many of the few survivors from these orchestras with such trauma. Many never wanted to play again.
It's a story that is so difficult, but by telling it through music and having it be a story of survival, we see it and feel it.
As a master of violin and the Greek bouzouki, Yona doesn't just share her family history through the Violins of Hope, but every day as a musician with the Illinois Symphony Orchestra and an ethnomusicologist at the University of Illinois at Springfield. Yona's heritage as part of a Jewish and a Greek family combines different worlds, one song at a time.
I think I began to see it a little bit academically, and I became fascinated by this rift between cultures and also by finding the moments in which they really intersect and align.
Yona's sister played their grandfather's violin as a child. Yona's personal violin is also a violin of hope. Erwin Fuss was a friend of their family. Like Arno Kahn, he also traveled from Cologne to New York in the 1930s, and his dream to play was silenced by the war. In his 90s, Erwin Fuss told Yona he wanted his violin to be heard again.
I think there is something very, very unbelievably moving about playing an instrument that was played by someone who either didn't survive the war or survived but had gone to experience such trauma that they couldn't bear to play their instrument again. You know, our instrument is our voice. When we're playing, our mouths are closed, but we're speaking. And so playing these instruments, we're really bringing back the voices of those who suffered and who are no longer able to play for whatever reason. So it's incredibly deeply moving, especially when you become attached to one of those instruments yourself and it becomes your own voice.
The Violins of Hope events continue to tour around the world. For more information on where they're going next, you can visit their website. For InFocus, I'm Julie Staley.